Well, happy Friday, everybody, and good morning, and welcome to day 21 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Hope you're loving our story still. What do you want me to do? Lockhart said weakly. I don't know where the Chamber of Secrets is. There's nothing I can do. You're in luck, said Harry, forcing Lockhart to his feet at one point. We think we know where it is and what is inside it. Let's go. They marched Lockhart out of his office and down the nearest stairs, along the dark corridor where the messages shone on the wall, to the door of Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. They sent Lockhart in first. Harry was pleased to see that he was shaking. Moaning Myrtle was sitting on the tank of the end toilet. "Oh, it's you," she said when she saw Harry. "What do you want this time?" "To ask you how you died," said Harry. Myrtle's whole aspect changed at once. She looked as though she had never been asked such a flattering question. "Oh, it was delightful," she said with relish. "It happened right in here. I died in this very stall. I remember it so well. I'd hidden because Olive Hornby was teasing me about my glasses. The door was locked and I was crying. And then I heard somebody come in. They said something funny, a different language. I think it must have been. Anyway, what really got me was that a boy was speaking, so I unlocked the door to tell him to go and use his own toilet then." Myrtle swelled importantly and face shining. "I died." "How?" said Harry. "No idea," said Myrtle in hushed tones. "I just remember seeing a pair of great big yellow eyes. My whole body sort of seized up, and then I was floating away." She looked dreamily at Harry. "And then I came back again, and I was determined to haunt Olive Hornby, you see. Oh, she was sorry. She'd ever laughed at my glasses." "Where exactly did you see the eyes?" said Harry. "Somewhere there," said Myrtle, pointing vaguely around the sink in front of her toilet. Harry and Ron hurried over to it. Lockhart was standing well back, a look of utter terror on his face. It looked like an ordinary sink. They examined every inch of it, inside and out, including the pipes below, and then Harry saw it. Scratched on the side of one of the copper taps was his tiny snake. "The taps never worked," said Myrtle brightly as he tried to turn it. "Harry," said Ron, "say something. Something in Parseltongue." But Harry thought hard. The only times he'd ever managed to speak Parseltongue was when he'd been faced with a real snake. He stared hard at the tiny engraving, trying to imagine it was real. "Open up," he said. He looked at Ron, who shook his head. "English," he said. Harry looked back at the snake, willing himself to believe it was alive. If he moved his head, the candlelight made it look as though it were moving. "Open up," he said, except that the words weren't what he heard. A strange hissing had escaped him, and at once the tap glowed with a brilliant white light and began to spin. Next second the sink began to move. The sink, in fact, sank right out of sight, leaving a large pipe exposed, a pipe wide enough for a man to slide into. Harry heard Ron gasp and look up again. He had made up his mind what he was going to do. "I'm going down there," he said. He could not go. Not now that they had found the entrance to the chamber. Not if there was even the faintest, slimmest, wildest chance that Ginny might be alive. "Me too," said Ron. There was a pause. "Well, you hardly need to need me," said Lockhart, with a shadow of his old smile. "I'll just—" He put his hand on the doorknob, but Ron and Harry both pointed their wands at him. "You can go first," Ron snarled. White-faced and wandless, Lockhart approached the opening. "Boys," he said, his voice feeble. "Boys, what good will it do?" Harry jabbed him in the back with his wand. Lockhart slid his legs into the pipe. "I really don't think—" he started to say, but Ron gave him a push, and he slid out of sight. Harry followed quickly. He lowered himself slowly into the pipe and then let go. It was like rushing down an endless, slimy, dark slide. He could see more pipes branching off in all directions, but none as large as theirs, which twisted and turned, sloping steeply downward, and he knew he was falling deeper below the school than even the dungeons. Behind him he could hear Ron thudding slightly on the curves. And then, just as he had begun to wonder about what would happen when he hit the ground, the pipe leveled out, and he shot out of the end with a wet thud, landing on the damp floor of a dark stone tunnel large enough to stand in. Lockhart was getting to his feet a little ways away, covered in slime and white as a ghost. Harry stood aside as Ron came whizzing out of the pipe too. "We must be miles under the school," said Harry, his voice echoing in the black tunnel. "Under the lake, probably," said Ron, squinting around at the dark, slimy walls. All three of them turned to stare into the darkness ahead. Lumos, Harry muttered to his wand and lit it again. Come on, he said to Ron and Lockhart, and off they went, their footsteps slapping loudly on the wet floor. The tunnel was so dark that they could only see a little distance ahead. Their shadows on the wet walls looked monstrous in the one-light. Remember, Harry said quietly as they walked cautiously onward, any sign of movement, close your eyes right away. But the tunnel was quiet as the grave, and the first unexpected sound they heard was a loud crunch as Ron stepped on what turned out to be a rat's skull. Harry lowered his wand to look to the floor and saw what was littered with small animal bones. Trying very hard not to imagine what Ginny might look like if they found her, Harry led the way forward, around a dark bend in the tunnel. Harry, there's something up here, said Ron hoarsely, grabbing Harry's shoulder. They froze, watching. Harry could just see the outline of something huge and curved lying right in the tunnel. It wasn't moving. Maybe it's asleep, he breathed, glancing back at the other two. Lockhart's hands were pressed over his eyes. Harry turned back to look at the thing, his heart beating so fast it hurt. Very slowly, his eyes as narrow as he could make them and still see, Harry edged forward, his wand held high. The light slid over a gigantic snakeskin of a vivid, poisonous green, lying curled and empty across the tunnel floor. The creature that had shed it must have been 20 feet long at least. Blimey, said Ron weakly. There was a sudden movement behind them. Gilderoy Lockhart's knees had given out. Get up, said Ron sharply, pointing his wand at Lockhart. Lockhart got to his feet, and then he dived at Ron, knocking him to the ground. Harry jumped forward, but too late. Lockhart was straightening up, panting, Ron's wand in his hand, and a gleaming smile back on his face. The adventure ends here, boys, he said. I shall take a bit of this skin back up to the school, tell them I was too late to save the girl, and that you two tragically lost your minds at the sight of her mangled body. Say goodbye to your memories. He raised Ron's spellotape wand high over his head and yelled, Obliviate! The wand exploded with the force of a small bomb. Harry flung his arms over his head and ran, slipping over the coils of snakeskin, out of the way of the great chunks of the tunnel ceiling that were thundering to the floor. Next moment he was standing alone, gazing at a solid wall of broken rock. Ron, he shouted, are you okay, Ron? I'm here, came Ron's muffled voice from behind the rockfall. I'm okay, this gets not, though. He got blasted by the wand. There was a dull thud and a loud ow. It sounded as though Ron had just kicked Lockhart in the shins. What now? Ron's voice said, sounding desperate. We can't get through. It'll take ages. Harry looked up at the tunnel ceiling. Huge cracks had appeared in it. He had never tried to break apart anything as large as these rocks by magic, and now didn't seem a good moment to try. What if the whole tunnel caved in? There was another loud thud and another ow from behind the rocks. They were wasting time. Ginny had already been in the Chamber of Secrets for hours. Harry knew there was only one thing to do. Wait there, he called to Ron. Wait with Lockhart. I'll go on. If I'm not back in an hour... There was a very pregnant pause. I'll try and shift some of this rock, said Ron, who seemed to be trying to keep his voice steady, so you can get back through. And Harry, see you in a bit, said Harry, trying to inject some confidence into his shaking voice, as he set off alone past the giant snakeskin. Soon the distant noise of Ron straining to shift the rocks was gone. The tunnel turned and turned again. Every nerve in Harry's body was tingling unpleasantly. He wanted the tunnel to end, and dreaded what he'd find when it did. And then, at last, as he crept around yet another bend, he saw a solid wall ahead on which two entwined serpents were carved, their eyes set with great glinting emeralds. Harry approached, his throat very dry. There was no need to pretend these stone snakes were real. Their eyes looked strangely alive. He could guess what he had to do. He cleared his throat, and the emerald eyes seemed to flicker. Open, said Harry, in a low, faint hiss. The serpents parted as the wall cracked open. The half slid smoothly out of sight, and Harry, shaking from head to foot, walked inside. He was standing at the end of a very long, dimly lit chamber. Towering stone pillars entwined with more carved serpents rose to support a ceiling lost in darkness, casting long black shadows through the odd greenish gloom that filled the place. His heart beating very fast. Harry stood listening to the chill silence. Could the basilisk be lurking in the shadowy corner, behind a pillar? And where was Ginny? He pulled out his wand and moved forward between the serpentine columns. Every careful footstep echoed loudly off the shadowy walls. He kept his eyes narrowed, ready to clamp them shut at the smallest sign of movement. The hollow eye sockets of the stone snake seemed to be following him. More than once, with a jolt of the stomach, he thought he saw one stir. Then, as he drew level with the last pair of pillars, a statue high as the chamber itself loomed into view. Standing against the back wall, Harry had to crane his neck to look up at the giant face above. It was ancient and monkeyish, with a long thin beard that fell almost to the bottom of the wizard's sweeping stone robes, where two enormous gray feet stood on the smooth chamber floor, and between the feet, face down, lay a small black-robed figure with flaming red hair. "Ginny!" Harry muttered, sprinting to her and dropping his knees. "Ginny, don't be dead. Please don't be dead." He flung his wand aside and grabbed Ginny's shoulders, turned her over. Her face was as white as marble and as cold, and yet her eyes were closed. So she wasn't petrified, but then she must be. "Ginny, please wake up," Harry muttered desperately, shaking her. Ginny's head lolled hopelessly from side to side. "She won't wake," said a soft voice. Harry jumped and spun around on his knees. A tall black-haired boy was leaning against the nearest pillar, watching. He was strangely blurred around the edges, as though Harry were looking at him through a misted window, but there was no mistaking him. "Tom? Tom Riddle?" Riddle nodded, not wanting to take his eyes off Harry's face. "What do you mean she won't wake?" Harry said desperately. She's not. She's still alive," said Riddle, "but only just." Harry stared at him. Tom Riddle had been at Hogwarts 50 years ago, yet here he stood, a weird, misty light shining above him, not a day older than 16. "Are you a ghost?" Harry said uncertainly. "A memory," said Riddle quietly, "preserved in a diary for 50 years. He pointed toward the floor near the statue's giant toes. Lying open there was a little black diary Harry had found in Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. For a second, Harry wondered how it had got there, but there were more pressing matters to deal with. "You've got to help me, Tom," Harry said, raising Ginny's hand again. "We've got to get her out of her. There's a basilisk. I don't know where it is, but it could be along any moment. Please help me." Riddle didn't move. Harry, sweating, managed to hoist Ginny half off the floor and bent to pick up his wand again. But his wand had gone. "Did you see?" He looked up. Riddle was watching him, twirling Harry's wand between his long fingers. "Thanks," said Harry, stretching out his hand for it. A smile curled at the corner of Riddle's mouth. He continued to stare at Harry, twirling the wand idly. "Listen," said Harry urgently, his knees sagging with Ginny's dead weight. "We've got to go if the basilisk comes." "It won't come until it's called," said Riddle calmly. Harry lowered Ginny back onto the floor, unable to hold her up any longer. "What do you mean?" he said. "Look, give me my wand. I might need it." Riddle's smile broadened. "You won't be needing it," he said. Harry stared at him. "What do you mean, I won't be?" He waited. "I've waited a long time for this, Harry Potter," said Riddle. "For the chance to see you, to speak to you." "Look," said Harry, losing patience. "I don't think you get it. We're in the Chamber of Secrets. We can talk later." "We're going to talk now," said Riddle, still smiling broadly, and he pocketed Harry's wand. Harry stared at him. There was something very funny going on here. "How did Ginny get like this?" he asked slowly. "Well, that's an interesting question," said Riddle pleasantly, "and quite a long story. I suppose the real reason Ginny Weasley's like this is because she opened her heart and spilled all her secrets to an invisible stranger." "What are you talking about?" said Harry. "The diary," said Riddle. "My diary. Little Ginny's been writing in it for months and months, telling me all her pitiful worries and woes, how her brothers tease her, how she had to come to school with second-hand robes and books, how," Riddle's eyes glinted, "how she didn't think famous great Harry Potter would ever like her." All the time he spoke, Riddle's eyes never left Harry's face. There was almost a hungry look in them. "It's very boring having to listen to all the silly little troubles of an 11-year-old girl," he went on. "But I was patient. I wrote back. I was sympathetic. I was kind. Ginny simply loved me. No one's ever understood me like you, Tom. I'm so glad I've got this diary to confide in. It's like having a friend I can carry around in my pocket." Riddle laughed, a high, cold laugh that didn't suit him. It made the hair stand up on the back of Harry's neck. "If I say it myself, Harry, I've always been able to charm the people I needed. So Ginny poured her soul out to me, and her soul happened to be exactly what I wanted. I grew stronger and stronger on a diet of her deepest fears, her darkest secrets. I grew powerful, far more powerful than little Miss Weasley, powerful enough to start feeding Miss Weasley a few of my secrets, to start pouring a little of my soul back into her. What do you mean? Said Harry, whose mouth had gone very dry. Haven't you guessed it yet, Harry Potter? Said Riddle softly. Ginny Weasley opened the Chamber of Secrets. She strangled the school roosters and daubed threatening messages on the walls. She set the Serpent of Slytherin on 4 mudbloods and the Squib's cat. No, said Harry, whispering. Yes, said Riddle calmly. Of course she didn't know what she was doing at first. It was very amusing. I wish you could have seen her new diary entries. Far more interesting they became. Dear Tom, he recited, watching Harry's horrified face, I think I'm losing my memory. There are rooster feathers all over my robes, and I don't know how they got there. Dear Tom, I can't remember what I did on the night of Halloween, but a cat was attacked and I've got pain all down my front. Dear Tom, Percy keeps telling me I'm pale and I'm not myself. I think he suspects me. There was another attack today, and I don't know where I was. Tom, what am I going to do? I think I'm going mad. I think I'm the one attacking everyone. Tom! Harry's fists were clenched, the nails digging deep into his palms. It took a very long time for stupid little Ginny to stop trusting her diary, said Riddle, but she finally became suspicious and tried to dispose of it. And that's where you came in, Harry. You found it, and I couldn't have been more delighted. Of all the people who could have picked it up, it was you, the very person I was most anxious to meet. And why did you want to meet me? Said Harry. Anger was coursing through him, and it was an effort to keep his voice steady. Well, you see, Ginny told me all about you, Harry, said Riddle. Your whole fascinating history. His eyes roved over the lightning scar on Harry's forehead, and their expressions grew hungrier. I knew I must find out more about you, talk to you, meet you if I could, so I decided to show you my famous capture of that great oaf Hagrid to gain your trust. Hagrid's my friend, said Harry, his voice now shaking, and you framed him, didn't you? I thought you made a mistake, but... Riddle laughed his high laugh again. It was my word against Hagrid's, Harry. Well, you can imagine how it looked to old Armando Dippet. On one hand, Tom Riddle, poor but brilliant, parentless but so brave, school prefect, model student. On the other hand, big, blundering Hagrid, in trouble every other week, trying to raise werewolf cubs under his bed, sneaking off to the Forbidden Forest to wrestle trolls. But I admit, even I was surprised how well the plan worked. I thought someone must realize that Hagrid couldn't possibly be the heir of Slytherin. It had taken me 5 whole years to find out everything I could about this Chamber of Secrets and discover the secret entrance, as though Hagrid had the brains, or the power. Only the Transfiguration teacher, Dumbledore, seemed to think Hagrid was innocent. He persuaded Dippet to keep Hagrid and train him as gamekeeper. I think Dumbledore might have guessed. Dumbledore never seemed to like me as much as the other teachers did. I bet Dumbledore saw right through you, said Harry, his teeth gritted. Well, he certainly kept an annoying close watch on me after Hagrid was expelled, said Riddle carelessly. I knew it wouldn't be safe to open the chamber again while I was still at school, but I wasn't going to waste those long years I'd spent searching for it. I decided to leave behind a diary, preserving my 16-year-old self in its pages so that one day, with luck, I would be able to lead another in my footsteps and finish Salazar Slytherin's noble work. Well, you haven't finished it yet, said Harry triumphantly. No one's died this time, not even the cat. In a few hours, the mandrake drop will be ready, and everyone who's petrified will be all right again. Haven't I already told you, said Riddle quietly, that killing mudbloods doesn't matter to me anymore? For many months now, my new target has been you. Harry stared at him. Imagine how angry I was when the next time my diary was open, it was Ginny who was writing to me and not you. She saw you with the diary, you see, and panicked. What if you found out how to work it, and I repeated all of her secrets to you? What if, even worse, I told you who'd been strangling roosters? So the foolish little brat waited until your dormitory was deserted and stole it back. But I knew what I must do. It was very clear to me that you were on the trail of Slytherin's heir. From everything Ginny had told me about you, I knew you would go to any lengths to solve the mystery, particularly if one of your best friends was attacked. and Ginny had told me the whole school was buzzing because you could speak Parseltongue. So I made Ginny write her own farewell on the wall and come down here to wait. She struggled and cried and became very boring, but there isn't much life left in her. She put too much into the diary, into me, enough to let me leave its pages at last. I have been waiting for you to appear since we arrived here. I knew you'd come. I have many questions for you, Harry Potter. Like what? Harry spat, fist still clenched. Well, said Riddle, smiling pleasantly, how is that you, a skinny boy with no magical talent, managed to defeat the greatest wizard of all time? How did you escape with nothing but a scar, while Lord Voldemort's powers were destroyed? There was an odd red gleam in his hungry eyes now. How do you care whether I escaped? Said Harry slowly. Voldemort was after your time. Voldemort, said Riddle softly, is my past, present, and future, Harry Potter. He pulled out Harry's wand from his pocket and began to trace it through the air, writing 3 shimmering words. Tom Marvolo Riddle. Then he waved the wand once, and the letters of his name rearranged themselves. I am Lord Voldemort. All right. We're going to stop there today. We'll pick up Monday at 9 a.m. Hope to see you then. Thanks so much.